Hey everybody, I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. So, before we get started with today's episode, I'd like to ask everybody, how was everybody's Halloween? I'm sure most of you guys went trick-or-treating, dressed up in face painting costumes, attended Halloween parties, and so on and so forth. Me, however, I stayed home and watched several of my favorite Halloween-related films on Blu-ray, DVD, or stream. Unfortunately, that spooky day ended very tragically when I heard that cancer took the life of my Uncle Robert Sprague, husband to my mom's college BFF, Marguerite, whom a few of you might remember as the author of Bodhi's Gold. And while that tragic loss has left a small hole in my heart over the last couple days, there was another loss that we all had to go through. A couple weeks ago, October 17th was the Endgame Day, when a group of brave heroes went through time to collect the Infinity Stones and resurrected everybody whom was snapped by Thanos 5 years ago. In the process, Black Widow sacrificed herself on the planet Vormir so that Hawkeye could obtain the Soul Stone, and of course, Tony Stark sacrificed himself to defeat the evil Mad Titan Thanos. By the way, if you may recall, I did a blog on the first two Iron Man films back in April and August, and while I've never seen either of these in theaters, I still stand by that the first movie was a superhero classic, while the second one was okay, but not as good though. But it still made a decent debut for Black Widow and a young Spider-Man before he was bitten. And it was also a pretty good origin story for War Machine. Anyway, for today's blog, we're going to look at the third and final film centering on Tony Stark. And let's just hope it makes a decent film in my eyes. Released on May 3rd, 2013, the movie is Iron Man 3. Now, on for the plot of the movie. Plagued with worry and insomnia ever since saving New York from destruction, Tony Stark now is more dependent on the suits that give him his Iron Man persona. So much so that every aspect of his life is affected, including his relationship with Pepper Potts. After a malevolent enemy known as the Mandarin reduces his personal world to rubble, Tony must now rely solely on instinct and ingenuity to avenge his losses and protect the people he loves. So, what are my thoughts? Well, let me put it like this. I like it more than Iron Man 2, but less than the Avengers and the first Iron Man film. But anyway, let's move on to Mustang notes. After the release of Iron Man 2 in May 2010, director Jon Favreau chose not to return for a third movie. Instead, Shane Black was hired to write and direct the sequel in February 2011, working with Drew Pearce to make the script more character-centric, focused on thriller elements, and use concepts from Warren Ellis's extremist comic book story arc. Filming took place on May 23rd to December 17th, 2012, primarily at EUE/Screen Gem Studios in Wilmington, North Carolina. Additional filming took place around North Carolina, as well as in Florida, Los Angeles, and China. By the way, an extended version of the film, specifically for Chinese audiences, was created, and 17 companies provided the film's visual effects. After the movie was released in theaters, not only did it receive positive reviews from critics, but it was also a box office success, grossing over $1.2 billion worldwide, making it the second highest grossing film of 2013. By the way, this was the only Iron Man movie I ever saw in theaters at the time, and I want to thank my cousin Shane for taking me to see it back then. Anyway, the things that I like regarding this movie is mostly the action and fight scenes, like most Marvel superhero films, even though a couple of the destruction scenes were a bit underwhelming for me. However, my favorite battles would have to be the Battle of Rose Hill and the battle on the Norco. And I like the scene where Tony was infiltrating the Mandarin's compound, which to me was very daring, risky, but also very epic and pretty intense. Also, aside from the film being inspired by the Extremist comics, I also like that it takes place after the Avengers' first assemblage. And nowadays, I also find it pretty interesting that it's minorly connected to Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, whom, may I remind you, my loyal viewers, was the very group who kidnapped Tony Stark in Afghanistan. Also to note, this film marks the debut of a young Jenna Ortega, who plays Vice President Rodriguez's daughter. Plus, for those who don't know what Extremist is, it's an advanced form of genetic manipulation using nanotechnology, which grants the human body the ability to heal and regenerate from physical damages, deformities, and even psychological damages. This also includes the regrowth of severe limbs in a very short time span, various physical enhancements, as well as an exothermic ability. Also, several years after the movie, the Extremists got to be referenced in other MCU media, not just at the Golden Dagger Club, but it's also been researched by Princess Shuri and the Skrull Resistance. And now, let's move on to the film's cast. Our main hero, Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, is played by Robert Downey Jr., best known from Weird Science, Tropic Thunder, the Sherlock Holmes films, the 2020 Dolittle film, and just recently, Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. Now, while Tony can be a bit of a jerk sometimes, as well as a drug addict, I still think his armors and inventions are very impressive, and he's a bit sympathetic due to him struggling to terms with his near-death experience during the New York battle back in 2012, suffering from anxiety attacks, which led him to create the Iron Legion to safeguard the world and help him retire. However, Tony was forced to come out of retirement due to the 2012 Mandarin terrorist attacks, which was putting his loved ones at risk, and it left him defenseless when his home was destroyed. Eventually, Tony defeated Dr. Killian, and after nearly losing Pepper Potts, he was prompted to destroy all of his armors with the Clean Slate Protocol. Next is Pepper Potts, played by Gwyneth Paltrow, who played a young Wendy Darling in Hook. Like in most MCU films, Pepper is a smart, capable, qualified, and trustworthy person as Tony described her to be. And according to Gwyneth Paltrow, while she still adores Tony, she absolutely gets fed up with him due to him getting caught in a feedback loop. During the crisis surrounding the Mandarin's terrorist attacks, Pepper was kidnapped by Dr. Killian, and she was infected with the Extremists. Thankfully, she was freed by Tony during the battle on the Norco, and went on to kill Killian herself. Afterwards, Pepper became cured by Tony, who temporarily gave up being Iron Man just for her. Next up is Tony's best friend James Rhodes, aka Rhodey, aka War Machine, played by Don Cheadle, whom was in the 1997 Volcano movie, Mission to Mars, Hotel for Dogs, and Space Jam: A New Legacy. During this film, in response to the Shatari invasion, Rhodey took on the identity of the Iron Patriot and worked directly with US President Matthew Ellis. When a terrorist called the Mandarin was claiming responsibility for the stream of domestic terrorist attacks, Rhodey was dispatched to hunt him down. After getting captured and having his Iron Patriot suit stolen, Rhodey managed to free himself and teamed up with Tony to defeat Dr. Killian's army before saving President Ellis. Next we come to Harley Keener, played by Ty Simpkins, whom was in the 2005 War of the Worlds film, the Insidious films, and Jurassic World. Harley is a local kid from Tennessee who crossed paths with Tony Stark while he was seeking shelter and food in his garage. Harley allied himself with Tony in his quest to uncover the enigmatic extremist program and prevent the series of associated terrorist attacks that plagued the United States. Despite being attacked by Eric Savan, Harley proved to be a very useful ally while helping Tony track down the Mandarin in Miami. Later on, Harley and Tony continued to keep in touch, with Tony becoming a father figure to him. Plus, on October 17, 2023, Harley was one of the many people who got to attend Tony Stark's funeral. Another character to talk about is Trevor Slattery, a struggling, drug-addicted actor who poses as the Mandarin, played by Ben Kingsley, whom I remember from Freddy as FR07, like as the Box Trolls, and the 2016 Jungle Book reboot. Now, it's been quite a while since I got to talk about him while I blogged the Shang-Chi movie, where he accompanied Shang-Chi, his sister Zhu Xiling, and their friend Katie Chen as they escaped from the Ten Rings headquarters and journeyed to the realm of Ta Lo. In this film, however, before getting captured by the real Mandarin, whom was Zhu Wenfu, Trevor was approached by Dr. Aldrich Killian to pose as the Mandarin. Taking up responsibility for all the widespread accidents caused by Killian's experiments and framing them as bombings, the Mandarin persona presented Slattery as the actual leader of the Ten Rings, becoming the world's most feared terrorist. However, his role was discovered by Tony Stark, who had Slattery arrested and then sent into Seagate Penitentiary. Finally, we come to the film's main villain, Dr. Aldrich Killian, played by Guy Pearce, whom was in The Count of Monte Cristo and Back to the Outback. Dr. Killian was the founder and CEO of Advanced Idea Mechanics. When Tony Stark had refused to join his research, Dr. Killian participated in Maya Hansen's development of extremists and amassed a group of extremist-enhanced soldiers under his command. To mask his illegal activities as terrorist attacks, he adopted the legend of the Ten Rings and an idealized terrorist persona known as the Mandarin, portrayed by Trevor Slattery, to serve as his proxy. Killian had also conspired with Vice President Rodriguez in an attempt to take economic and political control of the United States for his own uses. However, after he had kidnapped both Pepper Potts and President Ellis, Killian was then confronted by Tony Stark, James Rhodes, and the Iron Legion, who thwarted his plans before Pepper killed him with the Mark IX armor. Other actors in the film include Rebecca Hall, Paul Bettany, James Badge Dale, William Sadler, and Miguel Ferrer. And now on to my final words. Overall, Iron Man 3 was a decent film from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. While it doesn't top my feelings for the first movie or the Avengers, at least it was a slight improvement over the second movie. I thought the story was very thrilling, thought-provoking, epic, political, and emotional at times, and I liked that it was inspired by the Extremist comic book arc. It had pretty good action and fight scenes, even though some were a bit underwhelming in my opinion. Also, like in the second film, Tony Stark did have some ups and downs, but he was still understandable and sympathetic. Pepper Potts and James Rhodes were great supporting characters. I thought Harley Keener was a decent new ally. Trevor Slattery was a pretty silly actor character, but at least he had a better role in the Shang-Chi movie. And the villain, Dr. Killian, was very power-hungry and menacing. Now, while Tony Stark is no longer with us anymore, he shall never be forgotten, and he'll live forever in our hearts as the invincible Iron Man. And I just pray that in the future, his daughter Morgan shall follow in his legacy as a new Avenger. Anyway, my rating for this movie will be an 83% out of 100. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to join me for my next blog, where we return to my Sophia the First memory lane, starting with an episode where she looks after her Aunt Tilly's manor. Mustang Power.